What's up, you guys? Welcome back to 10 Million in 10 Months. I'm Kim, CEO and co-founder of Listener Brands, and we own both CurlMix and Forbes Only. Today, I'm going to be teaching you how to raise $1 million from angel investors for your startup. But before I get started, go ahead and click that subscribe button for me. You know you want to, so you can get notifications on our next update and my revenue check-in. I'm going to be recording our revenue for year-to-date, January through March, very soon, and you'll want to be notified when that happens. All right, so let's get into it. There are 10 commandments that I like to follow when it comes to raising money, especially for $1 million, and especially when you're engaging angel investors and people who are taking the biggest risk on you as an entrepreneur. The first commandment is to always be pitching. Pitching gets you on stages and in front of people, and it really ups your credibility. It helps you get better at pitching. It makes you more confident at speaking, which is a natural skill, which is a skill you will have to develop and get really good at if you're going to be the CEO and the front-facing person of your company. Early on, I pitched everywhere. And I applied for everything local because it was free for me to get to, but it would also expose me to all the angel investors in my network, in my community. A lot of times we're like, oh, well, if we're not winning money, it's not worth pitching. And that's not true. In fact, some of the biggest impact events I've had came from pitching at free events. The first event I pitched at, well, not the first, but one of the most impactful pitches I ever gave that I won no money at was a TechCrunch pitch here in Chicago that was local. The winner of the pitch competition would get like a ticket to TechCrunch, and I'm a haircut company. I'm not gonna benefit from having a booth at TechCrunch, right? Maybe, but maybe not. But I went anyway because it was a chance to pitch and get in front of people who have money, and the judges were really cool. And so I went, and there were about 18 companies pitching. And essentially 18 companies got 1 minute to pitch, and then they narrowed it down to 9, and they narrowed it down to 6, and then they narrowed it down to 3, and they picked a winner. And this is the time when we were pivoting from the DIY box to the flaxseed gel. And I ended up winning that pitch competition. And you know who happened to be there? The co-founder of Grubhub. And he basically was like, yeah, reach out to me. Me and my wife love to angel invest, and we definitely want to invest in more women. And not only him, but one of my early investors in CurlMix, I found him there. And then so many other founders and some of the investors were there, and I started to kind of create buzz. And at that pitch competition, I had the most traction. And we were, what they call the hockey stick up and to the right. That was happening. That was the month we went from 3,000 in monthly sales to about 30,000. And so we ended up winning that pitch competition. And from that pitch competition, helped build all of my investor relations in my Chicago network. So it's very important to pitch even when you're not going to win money. I recommend pitching as much as possible until it hurts the business. When I was pitching, there was a point in which we were approaching $1 million in annual revenue. And when I would go out and have all these investors conversations, because I was the one doing all the marketing, we would have a dip in revenue that month, because I wasn't able to send out the emails and do all the communications. So until it starts to really hurt your business, pitch as much as you can, like your life depends on it. Commandment number 2, you absolutely must create an investor newsletter where you're sending them monthly updates on your biggest challenges, your 3 biggest challenges, 3 biggest wins, last month's revenue, and then what you're projecting for this month's revenue, and a trailing 6 months of revenue if you can. I did this before we raised $1 million. I did this for about 12 months. And I sent it to all the investors that I knew who were either interested or I had a warm intro to. And I want to say I had maybe 10 to 20 investors on my list. So by the time we had filmed for Shark Tank, I mentioned it in the, investor newsletter. And then we were raising to fund the inventory before we went on the show. And granted, I had taken no investment up until this point, except for Arlen's like $25K check. And it was on a convertible note. So it wasn't even like a price round or anything like that. If you're confused about any of the terminology I'm using, read Venture Deals by Brad Feld. This is going to be very, very helpful for you. But I kept up with this newsletter, and I was sending them monthly updates every month, because you gotta think about it, right? You're asking an investor to write you a check, and an angel is investing their own money, their own hard-earned money. They're taking that $15,000, $20,000 or whatever, or $100,000, and they're saying, I believe in you as a founder. I want to give this to you. And the only reason they're going to give this to you is because they trust and believe in you. It is not about how all your numbers. It is not about like whether or not it is truly just a belief, right? Because it's such a big risk. You don't really have a stable business. You could quit tomorrow, right? And so this investor newsletter builds trust. If you're doing this for at least 3 to 6 months before you ever ask for a check, I guarantee you're going to be so much closer to actually getting that check as long as you're showing that growth trajectory, right? So you must have this investor newsletter. You must send it out monthly, and you must be consistent with it, even when you have bad months. Sometimes so we can be afraid to send out investor notifications when we don't have a great month. But this is the time to double down on it because you're going to have bad months in the future, 2-3 years from now. Might as well get it out the way and get into the habit of talking to your investors often. All right. They say that when founders stop communicating with the investors, that means the business isn't doing well. And I think that's true because it's kind of embarrassing. And I still do this investor letter to this day. We've raised over 5.7 million between crowdfunding and angel investments. I've raised 1.2 million from angel investments and 4.5 from crowdfunding. And now that I'm raising my Series A for 20 million, or I haven't started yet, but I'm planning to do that this year. I still send this monthly update to all of my angels, all of my well, actually, I pretty much only have angels and crowd investors, but I send this to our angels every month because new investors want to go back and talk to my angels to see how I communicated with them and if I was a good founder and if I was a good bet. So you're going to want to keep doing this pretty much forever. And what I have also found is to not get too complicated with the updates because that'll prevent you from sending them. So if you have to do a video presentation or a slide deck or all these different things, I mean, it's great, but investors don't have a lot of time, right? They're busy, wealthy people. You really just want to make it real quick and dirty, enough for them to glance and say, oop, I saw it, Kim's doing well, or Kim's struggling, how can I help? You want them to kind of get it just very, very quickly. And it's going to help you raise money down the line, even though it's much bigger checks, because it's all about who you know and not what you know. My third commandment is to always be networking. I went to every event locally and even the ones that were in California or Silicon Valley or over on the east side in New York. I would go wherever I needed to go as long as I could afford the ticket and the plane. And I was just there either pitching or getting to know people. That's how I met Arlen, and she wrote us our first check for $25K. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, how'd you get Arlen to invest? Well, Arlen was new at investing at the same time that I was new in my company. And so I just hopped on a plane to San Francisco on a whim to meet her and to just get feedback on my company. And that's when she decided to invest. It was one of her first 25 or first 50 investments, and she's done hundreds now. So go to these different networking events. Another event I would go to in my city, which is 1871. They're an incubator here in Chicago. I also went to Blue 1647, which is a Black-owned incubator here in Chicago. And they would have pitch competitions. They would also have founder meetups and dinners, and they would have these monthly. And the bigger or more traction you have, or the bigger your business gets, the more access you'll have to the more exclusive founder dinners where you'll meet people who are doing 10 million annually or 20 million or whatever. And those are the rooms you want to be in because you want to start raising your $1 million or your 2 million or 5 million or whatever. Those founders will make intros to investors for you. Everyone wants to be the person who told their investor about a really good deal, right? So make sure you're going to those dinners and showing up to those events so you can get those invites. Also, funds in your area, ones like High Park Angels here in Chicago and Listen Ventures, they invest early as well, and they were having founder dinners. And some of my intros even came from those founder dinners. So check out the incubators, check out the accelerators, check out local funds and venture capitalists in your area. Commandment number 4, follow venture capitalists on Twitter. Most of them do all their content on Twitter because it's really easy to shoot out a tweet every day and kind of get notification blasts to all your followers, right? They also like to kind of go back and forth or debate. And just as much as you need to have your face out there as a founder, they need to have their face out there as a VC so the best deals or the best companies can find them, right? So if you follow them on Twitter, not only are you going to get their updates and how they feel, it's going to help you tailor your meeting to kind of appease to them a little bit because you are selling, right? You're selling the chance to be a part of your company to them. The other thing is that a lot of them actually respond via Twitter. And that was something that I was kind of shocked about. I hit up a VC via their DMs on Twitter, and they had like 15,000 followers. I wasn't sure that they were going to reply. And they hit me back with like, hey, I'm sorry, but like, CPG is not really in our thesis, right? So they don't invest in CPG. But that was way faster than me trying to like go through all these channels and get warm intros to that VC, and only to have a meeting with them, pitch, and then they say, hey, you're not a fit. I could just tweet them. I'm not tweet them, but I could also just hit them up in the DMs and they just let me know. So Twitter is definitely a place you should be following. And if you don't know how to find the VCs you should be following, look up those lists on Look up those lists on Crunchbase or TechCrunch or Essence or any kind of media, whether they're like top 10 black VCs or top 10 VCs in CPG or top 10 VCs in healthcare and AI and VR, all of those things. That's how you're going to find that list. Go follow them on Twitter and then try to engage with them and hit them up in the DMs. Now, if you hit them up in the DMs, like, don't just say, hey, I see that you're an investor and I'm looking for an investment. That is the fastest way to get ignored or to leave a bad impression, right? So you want to see if you can get their email. Say, hey, I would love to add you to my investor newsletter and give you updates on our startup every month. Now, if you do that, all they have to do is reply with their email, and you're way more likely to get investor interest than trying to just ask them for money and you've never met them before and they don't know anything about you, right? So just ask for their email and then get them on your investor news list and start building that trust. It's like dating, right? Like, how many girls are going to ignore a message you send them in the DM and says, hey, I want to go on a date with you? And they don't know anything about you. Y'all haven't spoken. I don't know what city you live in. I don't know you from I don't know you from the color blue. Like, so you've got to think about it as relationship building. My fifth commandment is to join an accelerator, a non-dilutive accelerator. Accelerators are there to help you figure out the problems in your business without judgment, right? These people are not guaranteed to give you money or do any kind of exchange, really. They're really just there to help. And what they're trying to do is build a pipeline for all the good deals, the businesses they want to invest in. And even if you're not a company that gets an investment, you'll get the free advice from the experts who sign up to run these accelerators and incubators. In my accelerator, I went to Women in STEM in 1871 here in Chicago. And that's where I learned about the difference between a vitamin and a painkiller, and how my DIY boxes were a vitamin and not a painkiller, like, a Tylenol or an Aleve. Versus a vitamin. Do you even know any vitamins, right? Like, it's so important to actually be solving a problem that your customer wants to snatch it out of your hand. So I learned that for free in my accelerator. And the key is non-dilutive, right? They didn't take any equity in my company. I've heard horror stories of friends who gave 10% to an accelerator and they didn't give them any money. And it was just like, oh, we helped you with your idea, right? If you get to be $1 billion company, 10% is a lot of money. That's $100 million for somebody who just met you in the beginning and gave you some good advice, right? Somebody should be giving you cash for that kind of equity. So try to find non-dilutive accelerators and incubators in your business. My sixth commandment is to research VCs, you guys. The best advice I can give you is to find an investor in your space that's already invested in another company that is where you want to be, but not a direct competitor. Hear me clearly. Let's say you make Luna bars, right? Those like healthy, like, I don't know if they're vegan or whatever, but they're like low sugar bars. You don't want to go and find the investors who invested in RX bar. That's a direct competitor. And if you go talk to them, they're going to use your information and tell RX bar, and then you've already lost your competitive advantage, right? So you don't want to look for RX bars investors, but you might want to look at Kellogg's cereal investors, that's just a poor example, but let me think. You might want to look at an energy drink investor, or you might want to look at someone who invests in spirits, wine and spirits, or alcohol, or you might want to look at somebody who invests in like chocolate snacks or something. Someone who does like a food investment that's not a direct competitor to your bars, right? So that's the same thing that I did. I went on PitchBook, I went on Crunchbase. PitchBook is expensive, especially if you have not really started making money in your business. Find a friend who can give you their login. It's literally like $15,000 to $20,000 a year, but it literally gives you all the information that you wouldn't find in an article about a company. So PitchBook crawls the internet and finds, and then they also get all the like deals and everything of who invested. When people report these things to like AngelList, and they compile it in PitchBook. So I can go to say Billy Razor Company. I don't know if you guys know about the Billy Razor Company, but I can click on their name in PitchBook, and I can see all their investors in their seed round, Series A round, Series B round, etc., and say, oh, all these people invest in CPG. Let me go click on their name and see all the other deals they've invested in. And if I see that they're consistently investing in food products and I make bars, they might be a great investor for me if they haven't already invested in another bar company. So this is how you tackle, or this is how you strategically go after investors. Now, let's say you don't have access to PitchBook and your friend doesn't have a login. No problem. Let's go to the press and the media, right? If you have a comparison, let's say you do Luna bars and you see someone invested in, I don't know, a healthy yogurt company, and it's all across the news. Find that investor, look them up on LinkedIn, find their email. It's a more manual process, but it can be done. You have to get scrappy and think about how you can reach out to those investors and add them to that newsletter. The seventh commandment is to get warm intros. One time I sent out, 50 emails to cold emails to investors, and I did not get a single reply. However, whenever I do warm intros where I reach out to an investor or a founder I know and ask them to make the intro, I almost always get a meeting within 24 hours. They may not meet me within 24 hours, but they respond and they set up a meeting to happen over the next week. Warm intros are like almost the only way you'll get to meet a brand new investor, because most of them do not reply to cold emails. Even though that's kind of gatekeeping and that keeps people of color out, it's true, but they also really only respond to warm emails. My eighth commandment is that you have to create scarcity. Think about a typical sale that you have in your business. People don't move unless they know the sale is ending, right? In my crowdfunding campaign, we made just as much money on the last day of the crowdfunding campaign as we did on the first day. And there was almost very little in between. And it's insane, but people don't move unless they absolutely have to. And investors are the exact same way. They are just people, and we have to realize this. So what does this mean? That means that if you have 20 people, right, on your entire newsletter, and then you end up having meetings with all of them, and maybe 5 are really interested, and they're like, oh my gosh, call me. We don't lead, but we would love to be a part of it, That means you just need one of them who are gonna write you a check, and they don't care if anyone else participates or not. They're like, we're all in, we believe in you, we know that you've got something there, we wanna invest. As soon as you get that first investor, all those people who were like, oh, we're interested, or I'm not so sure, they will be chomping at the bit to invest in your company. I'll give you guys a quick little story. When Jeff Weiner, former CEO of LinkedIn, but he was a CEO at the time, and his partner called me up and said, hey, we want to invest $1 million into your business. Oh my gosh. Everybody else who had said, oh, I'm not so sure, or oh, we don't know, my phone was literally ringing off the hook. They all were like, can we give you 100K? Can we give you 50K? Can we give you whatever? And my round ended up being oversubscribed. I had to turn people down because I didn't want to give up that much equity. And they were all fighting to get into the deal because Jeff was in it. And I was like, I had a huge lesson on scarcity, on how to properly raise money. It just changed my belief about all of this. And so now I know there has to be some kind of limits or scarcity built into your actual raise, and it should be strategic. It shouldn't just be like, I'm waiting on a check. You have to set it up. You have to drum up that interest, have some kind of like really cataclysmic event. I had Shark Tank, but it doesn't have to be Shark Tank. It could be something else. It could be, oh, you're going into this store and you need the money by this date, or you can't place an order. It could be anything, but make it a monumental event that will change the business, and set that financing round up around it as well, because scarcity matters in selling, both to your customers and to investors. My 9th commandment is that you need competition, right? Which leads me into my 10th commandment, which is don't take the first deal. The first deal is probably always going to be the lowest, unless it's giving you a multiple that you're very happy with, right? Now, don't take a crazy multiple that you can't beat on your next round. But if you have your mindset for 3 to 5x and someone gives you that, sure, take that first deal. But that almost never happens, right? That was not how it happened for me. My first offer was a $2 million valuation on Shark Tank, and we were going to do $1 million in revenue that year. So we said no to that deal. Then my next offer, which came about 4 months later, was a $6 million valuation on that same $1 million in revenue. Now, when you're low in revenue, your multiples should be much higher because it is very, very early on. And we were showing signs that we were going to do $5 million the next year. And we were on track to do that right around the time Jeff Weiner and his partner called me and wanted to do a $1.2 million deal. And at that time, I knew we were going to hit $5 million in revenue, and we had appeared on Shark Tank and all this stuff. And he gave me a $12 million valuation. Now, what if I had said yes to Robert Herjavec for that $2 million valuation? Or what if I had said yes to that Angel Syndicate for a $6 million valuation? I literally 6x my money by just waiting a bit longer and not taking the first deal. So you got to create that competition, and you got to know how other people are valuing you. So I kind of combine commandments 9 and 10, but create competition. And the 10th one is to don't take the first offer. Last bonus tip, you guys. You want that first million to come from angels if you can. Angels are really wealthy individuals. They will give you the money. They'll make a few calls for you, but they won't be hanging this over your head. They won't be pushing you like a typical VC will. A VC is technically an employee of the fund. So there's more pressure on them to get this right, because if they don't, they won't be able to raise their next fund. And rich people, they don't need this. Your business could fold up tomorrow and they will be fine. And that's not how you should operate, but it creates less pressure for you as a founder. So my recommendation is to raise your first $1 million from really wealthy people and not traditional venture capitalists. It's easier said than done, I know, but it literally took me maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years to raise that first $1 million, right? 2017, I realized my business needed to pivot. We pivoted at the top of 2018. I started entertaining VCs and talking to them for the entire next year. And then my actual investment didn't come until 2019 after Shark Tank, you guys. So I would say I was raising for 2 years because I knew as a Black woman, I'd have to make money before I could raise it, right? So it's a long ride, but I think it can be worth it, and it'll help you build a massive company. Thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to click the subscribe button before you go, and share this with a friend who is trying to raise money for their startup. This will be super helpful.